Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Press Play Lifestyle Inspired podcast. I am your host, Jackie Schwab, and we do interviews with inspiring people like our new friend here, Cory, to help you provide the resources, tools, and support that you need to be your best inspired selves. So, hi, Cory, how are you today?
I'm very good. How are you, Jackie?
I'm great. It's actually kind of warm in my city in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is not that common. We had snow 2 days ago. So I'm excited about the warm weather, and all my kids are home. I have 4 small humans, and actually I'm enjoying the time with them. So I'm doing well. How about you?
Yeah, the same for me. My daughter and my wife, we've been home for I guess a week and a half or whatever or more now. So we're
Yeah.
enjoying the time together. And like I was saying earlier off camera here, we live out in the country as well. We're south of Ottawa, Ontario. So we're kind of isolated just outside of a small town called South Mountain. So we're doing okay. You know, just keeping busy on our own time here. And once in a while I post a song or two on Facebook just to keep everybody sort of keep their minds hopefully in a positive place.
Absolutely. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of artists have been just so generous with their art by sharing their music and getting online and putting things out. And not that you're not always very generous, but it seems like if there's been an uptick in like getting out there and sort of in a non-formal way, not necessarily at a concert or a show, but just sharing to uplift people's spirits, which I think is beautiful. And it says a lot about the artistic community in general. When people are stressed, they turn to that versus like, science or math or something like.
Yeah,
So let's make sure we keep music in schools. Off my soapbox.
definitely. Music
Um,
is a universal healer, right? So
Absolutely. I can't agree more. So I wanted to tell the listeners a little bit about you, who you are, what you're doing out there in the world.
well, as you know, I'm a singer-songwriter and a musician and a performer, and I've been doing this sort of thing for many years. I started when I was 13 years old as a bass player, and so that's many years ago now. I'll be turning 48, I guess, at the end of April. So a long time. Been playing music independently and with bands over the years, and writing my own music pretty much on a full-time basis since solo artist since 2004. But even prior to that, I was writing stuff with a different band and stuff, late 90s sort of thing. So what I've been up to now, I guess, just I've been still writing and recording music all the time. I just recently got back from Nashville about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was down there working on 2 new songs, which won't be out till later this year. But I also have a new single out right now called Leavin', which was recorded prior to going to Nashville. So it's out there right now, and hopefully people can get some positive stuff off of that one. So
Yeah, I
keeping
like that
busy.
one quite a bit. I think
Thank you.
we have been given some of that montage that will be part of the podcast that we're given from your press people that we're allowed to share. So it's super exciting, and it's a neat vibe. I think it's not like anything else anyone else is doing, but it's familiar enough where you're not like, whoa, what's going on there? So I like it a lot. I'm kind of curious. So you just did a single. You have 2 more you're working on, and didn't you just get nominated for like the Josie Music Award as well, right?
Yeah, that was last September. The JMAs, or the Josie Music Awards, took place in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. So we got to go down there, my wife and my daughter and I had a nomination for my last album, which is called The Long Road Home. So that was nominated for Male Album of the Year. So that was pretty special, really, really cool to be down there hanging out with all the independent people from all over the world, and especially being in like Tennessee, it's so cool, and then being at Dollywood with, the theme park, and my daughter got to go crazy there and do lots of stuff. And so yeah, it was
Yeah,
really wonderful. Yeah.
that's so cool. And the reason I bring it up was it was a loaded question because I actually lived in Gatlinburg in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee
Oh, we were
for
there.
when I was a kid, and a lot of my friends were like cousins of Dolly Parton, right?
Wow.
So I was like, no one ever knows where Pigeon Forge, Tennessee is, ever, unless you're a country music singer, songwriter, or Dolly Parton. or you live there, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, they had a music award, but it makes sense that it be near Dollywood. But
Yeah.
that's exciting.
Well,
What
it's a
time of year?
wide. Sorry,
What time of year were you guys out there?
September. Yeah, last September.
Oh,
It was
see, it's a
beautiful.
nice time of year too. It's very beautiful.
Yeah.
There's mountains very close to Pigeon Forge.
Yeah.
So my stepdad is a motorcycle rider. So he would take us to ride up in the mountains, and there's like all kinds of waterfalls up there. It's just
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah. We stayed right in the middle, like kind of right down in the Smoky Mountains at the hotel we stayed at in Pigeon
Yeah,
Forge. It's just 5 minutes from the theme park. So, yeah.
that's awesome. Well, it's good that your daughter got to go with you too, so you don't always miss time with her when you're on the road.
Yeah, it was important. I mean, it was a really nice family getaway, number one, and then just to be a part of that whole thing was just an added bonus. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
one of the things that I was kind of wondering, and maybe I'm off track, but it seemed like you're kind of an independent guy for, let's just say, even 35, 30 plus years. And then recently, like September around last year, had a new distribution deal with MTS Records. And is that sort of a transition out of sort of all doing it kind of all by yourself, all alone, to
Yeah.
having some support, or what led to sort of that shift, if it is a shift? I'm reading into what I've read online.
Right. Well, MTS Records and MTS Management Group, which is run by Michael Stover, is actually an independent music label and management group. So he works with all independent artists from all over the world. So he'll be dealing with anybody who's, not signed with a big time record label, which a lot of artists today, that's just the way it is. And it's just the nature of the business. Like everybody's out there doing it, pushing themselves. So yeah, I've been doing that for a lot of years. So this is, the last 2 years, I guess, I've been working with Michael and MTS. So it's been a really good help as far as, getting the music out there, the publicity and the promotion of everything, which he does a great job at. And so the transition has been nice that way. You don't have to do a million things every day to try and sort of survive in like a million artists on the internet or social media, which you're still one of those anyways. But I mean, it's just, you're getting so much more broad scope, I think, of people recognizing you that way. And so
Yeah,
that's a
that's
little bit
awesome.
about that. I mean, yeah, it's different than being signed to like a major record label or something like that, where you're kind of, prone to what they tell you to do sort of thing, I guess. I've never been signed to a major label myself. So, that's something that, was when you were young, or when I was like 19, 20 years old. I mean, I don't know if I would have wanted to sign something at that point, because number one, you don't want to give away too much of the rights to your music or whatever it is, and lose out in the end. So now I think going through so many years of just seeing how everything actually really works in the music industry, so much more, and there's more knowledge to kind of bring forth now. So
Yeah, I think one thing I didn't realize until I actually asked Michael about it was, some if you talk to some artists, they can't share with you some of their stuff to use as like promo materials. It's because they're signed with a huge record label, and the record label is the only one that kind of gets to decide that. And so in my wonderful ignorance, I was like, am I allowed to share this? And he's like, yeah, that's why I gave it to you. So I was like, oh, okay. So I think it might be a little bit different, and
yeah,
like you said, it's still yours. You still own your
yeah.
things, and versus a lot of rules on what you're allowed to do and how you're allowed to share.
Yeah, that's the whole nature of being independent. You pretty much control everything that you do and say and want to have, get out there. So
Yeah, and
Michael's very flexible that way.
I was wondering, is that important to you? Because I think I went and listened to a bunch of interviews that you'd done in the past, and I think there was a lot of where you kind of brought up sort of being an important, that you were an independent. And is that been important to you later in your career, or was that just something that I maybe didn't hear right?
I think so. I mean, now with, having a family, my daughter's turning 6, obviously at the end of April too, or middle of April. So, your priorities in life change. So, I mean, if you don't have some sort of, control, I guess, over your own, destiny sort of thing, or whatever you're doing, it makes it a lot harder. If you have to be away from your family, say for a certain amount of time or something, you can kind of, myself as an artist can say, well, this is what I'd like to do and when or where we're going to go. And you know, and going on the road these days is not the same as it was in, like, you know, the early 90s when I was on the road with a couple different bands and traveling and touring. It's not the same. I mean, the industry and just the whole outlook for everything has changed so much. So, but yeah, I think it's important to really have control and not let somebody else dictate what you're doing.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be important. I mean, I like control of my life. That's why I do what I do, and I'm not working for a company. So I relate, but I was just curious. Which
Hmm.
leads me to like one of my favorite things that, other than your amazing music that I was reading about, was you still actively teach guitar lessons to students, right? Like in your where you're living.
Well, I have been up until 2 weeks ago.
Ah, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
But yeah, I do. I've been teaching guitar for a lot of years too, probably 18 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's just great. I mean, they're always interested in what's going on, and sometimes I'll, you know, give them a hint of something that's coming up or whatever, and so they kind of think it's pretty cool. I think. I mean, I think my students are cool, so hopefully it goes both ways. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think people forget though, like a lot of musicians, music isn't their only earning potential, right? So you still teach kids. You might still teach guitar to people anyway, even if you weren't a musician, but that's another job that you have, and so you're affected by what's going on with everyone as well. Um,
yeah, yeah, it's nice to have the outlet too. So
yeah. My husband's actually likes guitar, plays guitar a bit, but he found a really great online course from Keith Urban that he just loves, because Keith Urban's one of our favorite artists in our home. So
me
with
too.
that being said, I was gonna say I was curious who inspires you in your music, because I love Keith Urban. I felt like there's a little, like I feel a little bit of that vibe sometimes with some of your stuff, and I was wondering who inspires you with your music.
Yeah, well, Keith Urban is definitely one of the sort of country rock sides of what I do. I'm influenced by many different things. Like I was growing up in high school listening to a lot of like very melodic rock stuff, classic rock, or anything out of the Los Angeles scene for a long time. I was into that. And then as you get older, you branch out and you listen to more singer-songwriters, which I did, you know. Neil Young, a Canadian, you know, later on I got into stuff like that. And, you know, Bryan Adams, Bon Jovi, Styx,
Oh, I
a
love
lot of
those
the
guys.
big melodic rock stuff, and you know, Eagles. So it's pretty much across the board. I'm influenced by many things. I think you're going to hear bits and pieces of a lot of different music in my songs, which, you know, everybody has to be influenced by something. Like I always say, like, you know, you look back to somebody who came out in the 80s, well, they were influenced by somebody in the 60s or 70s. I mean, it just keeps going, right? So
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great. Do you have a favorite song that you have written that you love right now, really love to play?
it's hard to nail down one favorite. I get this, you know, I get asked this one sometimes, and I
Oh
really
yeah.
like, yeah, the new single "Leavin'." I really like that one. It's a song that I've kind of had around for a few years that kind of came into the form it's in now just this last year, because it was originally recorded when I was going to Los Angeles in 2014 to work with Ron Nevison, who's been my producer on a couple of my last albums, and so that was a song that was originally sort of planned that I was hoping to do then, but it didn't make the final 3 songs we did for the EP at the time. And so I kind of held on to it, and I had an acoustic version of it there a couple years ago, and then went back to my friend Marc Muir, who plays guitar with me, and he's out of Cornwall, Ontario. So we worked on putting the new version of it together, and it turned out very, very well. I think I'm really happy with it, and it's doing. I think it's doing pretty good so far. Hopefully, people are enjoying it. So
Yeah, it seems like I've been watching some of the rankings, right? So one of the things great about MTS Records is on their Facebook page, they actually post updated rankings of where different artists are that he represents. And you've had a steady climb over the last few weeks of a couple
that's
of them.
good.
So yeah,
I haven't noticed that. That's great.
yeah, you should go like the Facebook page of the agent. No, I'm saying, but yeah, so there's been a couple like with the kind of the country rock scene sort of some of those lists. So I was like, oh, this is really cool. Uh, and I like the music. So and I guess it was like asking like who's your favorite kid, right? It became so do you have a favorite song? Like do you have a favorite child? Well, not that I could tell you online, but
It's kind of like that in a way, yeah. Except the songs don't really talk back and say, "Well, thanks a lot," you know.
Yeah, unless you've had maybe way too much to drink, then that's
Yeah,
possible.
but
Well,
yeah.
is there anything else, like where can people find, since you're independent, I mean, maybe they're not necessarily going to find you on some big label, or where can they, I know you have a bunch of stuff on Spotify, maybe, where can they find you and help support your career and what you're working on?
Yeah, definitely. You can go to Spotify. My music is there. That seems to be the very, the most recent, most popular platform for people to go and stream music. I mean, there's not much even downloading anymore that people seem to be doing. So places like Spotify, iTunes, you can go to YouTube. All those links are accessible at my website, which is www.corymcoons.com. So everything's there, all the links and the videos, and you can even get physical CDs, physical product there. I even had some vinyl people before Christmas time. I was having a little thing where if you wanted to order the vinyl album, I could do a special order, like sort of one at a time for somebody. And so even if you're interested in that, you can send me a personal message, and I could, send you one of those out of I think it's or somewhere in Nevada they get printed. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool because I know my mom was she's a big record person, right? And my mom's young, so I'm in my 40s, my mom's in her 60s, and I just remember like some of the cover art back then, like Boston, right, or the
Yeah.
Eagles, they had just like the best cover art. And I feel a little bit old nowadays because I mean I've actually had an 8-track and then a cassette and then a CD and then there's vinyl. Like
Yeah.
I've lived through all of those mediums, and now it's like, oh, go stream it on Spotify. I'm like, oh, so such a letdown. So I
Yeah,
can see
it's
people wanting it.
I know it seems so disposable now for young kids. Like it's like they can listen to something and then like in 5 minutes their attention's gone completely to something else. You know what I mean? Is you don't have that album to open up and look at those great pictures and or see the lyrics and see the stories about everything. And although vinyl is kind of coming back in some regards for artists, they're re-releasing stuff on vinyl. So,
Oh,
but I
that's
have all the
exciting.
collection that I used to have, and then I have all my mom's old records. You know, she's passed away as well as my dad, but I still
I'm
have all
sorry
of
to hear
her
that.
records and 45s and that I keep
Oh,
around
that's
here. So
super cool.
thanks. Yeah, I introduced my daughter Charlie to the stuff, and now she knows how to run a record player and everything. And she's like, "Oh, can we listen to this now?" And it's great, you
Yeah.
know.
I think it's really interesting. And again, I think for me, it sort of like brings me back a little bit to sitting around the house and your mom puts the record player on and we were listening to like Bob Seger or something like that. And it was a special time. And I think music always, every important time in my life is linked back to some sort of song, like Bryan Adams' Summer, the Summer of '69, or a lot of Bon Jovi stuff. I'm a child of the '80s and '90s, and but
Yeah,
my wedding song, right? It was Lone Star. So there's like all these beautiful times in my life that are linked to music, and that's part of why, for me, I think music is so inspiring because it brings me back to all these times in my life where I was happy and things were
yeah,
good.
yeah. I think
Well,
that's
thank
what.
you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. I was just gonna say, I think that's what a lot of songwriters sort of strive for is to, if your song, resonates with someone, or if they can remember a specific time when they were listening to that song, or if it, had some
Yeah.
effect on you in your life. I think that's what a good song does to people. So
Yeah,
that's
what is
nice.
it they say? The mimicry is the greatest form of flattery, right? Like people try to cover your stuff, and you're like, oh my God, they're covering my stuff. That's so great.
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cory. I appreciate you coming on. I do hope people check out, I'll put all of your information will be in the show notes. I hope people do check out your YouTube channel because you have some really good sneaky peeks in there of some stuff that you've got going on, and the latest single, and the new, you have the latest album you just recorded out there, or like some information. So hopefully they go out there and check that out, and we'll link to Spotify so you can go
Yeah.
check out stuff. But thank you so much for taking the time, and I hopefully you get to have a lot of creative time while you're spending time home with Charlie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Jackie. Thanks for having me. And you can always check me out on Facebook too. I'm pretty active on social media on Facebook and stuff. So I'm on
Awesome.
Instagram too, but I just kind of recently joined that maybe 6 months to a year ago or something. So I don't
Yeah,
have the
that might
follow.
be our ages. Like I think I just joined Instagram and got a little more active there recently, but a little more Facebook and some of those things. But you have Michael's got you out on a lot of different channels as well. So it's, I mean,
Yeah.
definitely YouTube, definitely Facebook, a lot of streaming audio platforms. So it's exciting. You're everywhere.
Well, that's what we try to do, right? So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And you take
All right,
care of
thanks.
yourself and stay
You
healthy.
too. All right, you too. Bye, Cory.
Bye-bye.